I am going to save you thousands of dollars in the next 15 minutes. Used Chevys are everywhere right now, and people are jumping on deals without checking the things that actually break. I have been fixing these trucks for 20 years. Miss even one of these 7 things and you are writing checks for months. Number 1. Take it on the highway and feel for the shudder. This is the very first thing I do on any test drive because it tells you everything about the transmission in about 10 minutes, and you cannot fake it behind the wheel. If the truck has an 8-speed automatic and a huge number of Silverados, Tahoes, Suburbans, and Colorados from around 2017 to 2021 have that transmission, you need to get it up to highway speed and hold it between 45 and 70 miles per hour under light throttle. That is where the torque converter locks up. And if the fluid is shot or the converter is wearing out, you will feel a vibration like driving over rumble strips. It comes and goes. Sometimes it is subtle enough that you try to talk yourself out of it. Do not do that. That shudder is the torque converter clutch slipping, and GM got hit with a class action lawsuit over it because so many trucks had the exact same problem. I had a customer bring in a 2018 Silverado and tell me it felt like the transmission was fighting him every time he slowed down for a red light. 3 weeks later, we were pulling the whole transmission. The full fluid flush is the short-term fix with the right synthetic fluid, and that runs around $350 to $500. But if the previous owner ignored it for 20,000 or 30,000 miles, you could be looking at a full torque converter replacement somewhere around $3,000. During the test drive, pay close attention to the shift from first to second and second back down to first. If it clunks, bangs, or hesitates on deceleration, walk away. And if the seller will not let you take it on the highway, that alone tells you something. But even if the transmission feels fine, there is something underneath the truck that can kill the whole deal in 2 minutes. Number 2. Stick your head under the truck and check the frame. I know nobody wants to crawl around underneath somebody else's truck in a parking lot, but this is the thing that separates a good buy from a dangerous one, and it takes 2 minutes. I get comments all the time from people who say they found a great deal on a Silverado or a Suburban from up north that got shipped down south. And I always tell them the same thing. Where that truck lived matters more than how many miles are on the odometer. On Chevys built before around 2014, GM used steel brake lines that corrode over time, especially if the truck spent any part of its life in the Rust Belt or anywhere they salt the roads in winter. I'm talking about states like Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and anywhere up through New England. The frame rails, the cross members, and especially the brake lines are what you are looking at. Some surface rust on the frame is not a deal breaker. You are going to see that on anything with some miles. What you are looking for is flaking, scaling, or spots where you can poke your finger into the metal and it crumbles. That is structural rust, and it means the truck is done. I had a 2003 Tahoe come through my shop a couple of years ago that looked beautiful from the outside. Fresh paint, clean interior, 80,000 miles. But the frame was so rotted behind the rear axle that I could push a screwdriver through it like it was wet cardboard. That truck was not worth fixing. On the brake lines specifically, if they look crusty and swollen, do not assume the brakes still work correctly. Corroded brake lines can burst under pressure, and I should not have to tell you how that story ends. Even on newer trucks, check the underside. Road salt does not care what year it is. Number 3. Look at the air conditioning condenser through the front grille. This one is sneaky because nobody thinks to check air conditioning when they are buying a truck. General Motors used an air conditioning condenser on 2014 through 2017 Silverados, Tahoes, Suburbans, and Yukons that has a design problem. The The spot welds on the sides crack from vibration over time, the refrigerant leaks out, and your air conditioning goes warm. I talked to a guy in a Silverado forum who said his dealership replaces 2 to 3 condensers a week because it is that widespread. General Motors even put out a special coverage warranty extension on some of these trucks, but plenty of them were not included, and if yours was not covered, you are looking at about $1,200 at the dealership. Here is what you do. Pull out your phone, turn on the flashlight, and stick it through the front grille. Look at the vertical edges of the condenser for green or oily residue around the welds. Then turn the air conditioning on full blast during your test drive. If it starts cold and gradually warms up after 15 to 20 minutes, that condenser is probably cracked. The good news is that the aftermarket replacement condensers actually fix the design with better weld distribution, so if the truck already has a replacement unit in there, you might actually be in better shape than a truck with the original part. But the next one is the reason I made this video. This single issue has cost my customers more money than everything else on this list combined. Number 4. Listen for lifter tick at startup and ask about AFM. This is the big one. If the truck has a 5.3 liter or a 6.2 liter V8, it almost certainly has active fuel management, also called AFM. That is General Motors' system that shuts down 4 cylinders under light load to save gas. I am going to say something that will make some people mad. I think AFM is the single worst engineering decision General Motors has made in the last 30 years. The 5.3 liter by itself is a fantastic engine. I have seen pre-AFM versions go 300,000 miles without a hiccup, but General Motors added a system that constantly collapses and re-engages hydraulic lifters, and those lifters fail. When they fail, they take the camshaft with them. Now you are looking at $3,000 to $6,000 in repairs depending on how much damage occurred. A customer of mine bought a Silverado 1500 with 52,000 miles on it. It looked perfect and ran perfect the day he bought it. 3 months later, he came back with a tick at cold startup that got louder every week. We pulled the valve covers and found a collapsed AFM lifter that had already started chewing into the cam lobe. That truck had a clean title, a clean Carfax, and every oil change on record. But it did not matter because the lifter still failed. So how do you catch this before you hand over your money? Show up early in the morning before the seller has started the truck. You want to hear that first cold start yourself. A healthy V8 should fire up smooth. If you hear a tick or a clatter that fades after 10 or 15 seconds, that is lifter noise, and it is only going to get worse. Ask the seller if AFM has ever been disabled with a tuner or a plug-in module. If they did that early, it can help. But if the truck has 80,000 or 90,000 miles and AFM has been running the whole time, you are rolling dice. I would not buy any AFM-equipped Chevy V8 without budgeting for an AFM delete as part of the purchase, or at minimum factoring that risk into the price you offer. And if I see a pre-AFM 5.3, like the trucks from 1999 through 2006, I get excited. Those engines are tanks. Number 5, check the oil level right there on the spot. This ties directly into what I just said about AFM. Pull the dipstick before you start the truck, and again after the test drive. If the oil is low, that is a red flag on any vehicle, but on a 5.3 with AFM, it is a screaming alarm. Some of these engines burn a quart every 1,000 to 2,000 miles, and GM's own position for a while was that a quart per 2,000 miles was within normal range. I am sorry, but I do not accept that as normal on a truck you are paying $20,000 or $30,000 for. Here is a trick I use. Ask the seller when the last oil change was and how many miles ago. Then check the dipstick level. If they say the oil was changed 1,000 miles ago and it is already a half quart low, you have your answer. That engine is burning oil, and it is probably the piston rings or the AFM system pulling oil past the seals. While you are checking the oil, look at the color and consistency. Dark is fine if the change is coming due. But if it looks like chocolate milk, that is coolant mixing with oil, and you need to leave immediately. That usually means a head gasket or an intake gasket is leaking internally, and neither of those is a cheap afternoon. If the oil is gritty or has visible metallic flake in it, same thing. That is metal-on-metal contact happening inside the engine. Do not negotiate, just walk away. If you are learning something from this video, do me a favor and hit subscribe. I put out videos like this every week to help you avoid the expensive mistakes I see in the shop every single day. Number 6. Test every screen, button, and electronic feature in the truck. I know this sounds basic, but here is why it matters more on Chevys than you might think. The infotainment systems on a lot of 2014 or newer Chevys have a reputation for freezing, rebooting, and losing features over time. The backup camera can cut out, the touchscreen can stop responding, and Bluetooth connections can drop. These are not cheap fixes because the head unit is integrated into the climate controls and other systems on the newer trucks. You cannot just swap in an aftermarket radio like in the old days. While you are testing the climate controls, switch the temperature from full cold to full hot and listen behind the dashboard. If you hear a clicking or ticking noise when you change the temperature, that indicates a blend door actuator going bad. I see this constantly on Silverados, Traverses, Equinoxes, and Tahoes. The part itself is cheap, maybe $30 to $50, but some of them are buried so deep behind the dash that the labor is 5 or 6 hours. Go through every single thing on that truck. Test all the power windows and mirror adjustments. Try the seat heaters if it has them. If it is a Silverado, make sure the trailer brake controller responds. Then cycle the 4-wheel drive selector into 4 high, then 4 low, and back to 2-wheel drive. If any of it hesitates, grinds, or does not engage, you just found a problem the seller was hoping you would not notice. I always tell people to bring a written checklist and actually go through it item by item, because when you are excited about a truck, your brain will skip things, and the checklist will not. But all of this is useless if you skip the one thing you should do before you even leave your house. Number 7. Pull the VIN and run a full history before you even show up. I put this last because it is the easiest one on the list and it should be done before you leave your house. Run the VIN through the government's recall database to check for open recalls. I cannot tell you how many used Chevys I have seen with unaddressed recalls sitting on them. The seller might not even know. Get a vehicle history report and look for red flags. Salvage title rebuilds, flood damage, odometer rollbacks, and gaps in the service history are all warnings. If the truck has 70,000 miles and 0 service records, somebody was not keeping up with maintenance. And that matters a lot on trucks with AFM or the 8-speed transmission. Also check if the truck was a fleet vehicle. Fleet trucks can be well maintained, but they can also be beaten to death and sold off the second the warranty expires. I bought a fleet Tahoe once thinking it was a deal. Every maintenance record was there, but the truck had been idling 8 hours a day running a worksite generator, and the engine hours told a completely different story than the odometer. Look at the registration history. If the title paperwork shows it bouncing between 3 states in 2 years, that is a red flag. And while you are running the VIN, cross-reference it against any technical service bulletins GM has issued for that model and year. There are a lot of them, and they tell you exactly what GM knows is going to break. Look, I am not trying to scare anybody away from buying a Chevy. I own Chevys and I love working on them. The 5.3 is one of the best truck engines ever built when it is not saddled with cylinder deactivation problems. But buying one used without doing your homework is how you end up in my shop 3 months later, staring at a repair bill that costs more than your down payment. Take this list, use it, and do not let a clean paint job and a good price make you skip the stuff that actually matters. Once you do find the right truck, watch the video on 13 Chevy mods that are actually worth it and 5 that will kill your engine. I have seen guys buy a great used Chevy and then bolt on the wrong parts and destroy it within a year. That video will keep you from making those mistakes.